Okay, I'm going to do a video showing how I do VNAV climb outs using Captain Sim's 777, in this case the 200 ER in Singapore Airlines livery. We're going to be taking off from Suvarnabhumi Airport in Thailand and flying to Changi in Singapore. Now, what has become clear to me is that people are unhappy with the rates of climb that they say are extreme for the 777, the CS 777, and I think a lot of that is possibly due to people not loading the plane properly, and if they are doing short haul flights, that the plane is naturally lightly loaded. It has to be, so that you don't exceed your maximum landing weight at the other end. And if one is lightly loaded for short haul, then obviously you're going to have to handle some of the you're going to have to handle that light load, because we've got an extremely powerful engines, a high amount of thrust, and I think that's one of the reasons why some people say they're not having problems at all with VNAV. And I think you'll find that many of those people are people flying long haul flights who are taking off fully loaded for a 7 to 10 hour flight, and they then are not experiencing such problems. So this is a typical short haul leg, Bangkok to Singapore, and I'll show you how I handle the situation and actually get a very smooth climb out. Okay, I'm using real live weather, AS 2012, which today has us taking off to the south, roughly runway 19 left. I've already programmed in my route into the CDU, including the standard instrument departure from runway 19 left to the south. Let's start off first by looking at the weight situation. In this case, I'm at 481,000 pounds, which is about 175,000 pounds short of the maximum takeoff weight. So I'm fairly lightly loaded here, and I have to deal with that in terms of how to handle the high thrust. Otherwise I will get extreme climb outs. Let's just fill in the rest of this. Reserves 20,000 pounds. I'm going to cruise at 32,000. Then the first item we come to that has a drastic effect on the vertical speed and climb out rate is our cost index. Now, if you're going to use a very economical index, a high index here, sorry, a very low index, a very economical number, a low index, you're going to have a very low airspeed. And with the extreme thrust that you've got and a lightly loaded plane, to maintain that low airspeed, the plane is going to pitch for airspeed, and so it's going to pitch up, and you're going to get a high climb rate. So since we're lightly loaded, we may as well dispense with economy and go for a high cost index, 80 to 100, so that we have a high airspeed on climb. And you'll see that in the VNAV page later. With a high airspeed, we're going to pitch for that speed. With the high thrust we've got, we're not going to get such a high pitch up attitude and not such a high climb rate. So let's forget about all economy and put in 100% there, and we'll see the effect that has on our climb speed. The next thing is the thrust takeoff thrust and other thrust limits. Today is a fairly warm day, 30 degrees. So we've got to be a little bit careful. We're lightly loaded. We've got quite a long runway here. So I'm going to use just on the safe side, a 10% takeoff derate, double derated to 30 degrees centigrade. And a climb to climb speed. Now the important thing to realize here is that this is just armed. It's not set. And in a properly programmed system, like a 777, as soon as you reach your acceleration altitude, it should automatically switch to this pre-armed climb thrust. But it doesn't do that in the Kaplan sim yet, in the 777. This is probably because this code in the FMC is almost a direct copy, I suspect, of their 757 code, where on the around the gear lever somewhere, auto brake just above there are buttons where one manually selects your various thrust settings. And I suspect that what's been done is that code has just been transferred and is now managed via manual clicking of the left and right buttons down the side of the CDU. So one has to basically have this page open on climb out so you can manually select these thrust settings. Okay, now that we've got that, and we can look at our takeoff. I'm taking off today with flaps 5. Our CG is roughly 30%, 5.29 trim, which gives us a 149 knot V2, and I usually go for V2 plus 20. So that's 169, we call it 170, and I set that over here. So 170 is our V2 speed. There we go, and this is just 2 degrees down. And now I'll turn my flight directors on, engage various things later. I usually only engage LNAV on the ground, not VNAV. What I do is I take off, climb manually, using the flight director to aim for stabilizing at V2 plus 20. And when that is stable and I'm above my acceleration altitude, I pitch down a little bit and then engage the autopilot, and the autopilot will engage in vertical speed AT mode at the vertical climb rate that I have the moment I engage this, and then I manually increase my speed, or at that stage I can switch on VNAV and let VNAV take over the speed management. But if I do that, like all good pilots, if I'm going to go and use a automated mode, then I'd better make sure that everything is okay with my leg settings and my altitude settings. Now you'll see here our first waypoint is only 6 nautical miles from the runway, and it's already wanting us to be at a speed of 250 knots. There's no ways we want to get that fast that quick. We have to clean up flaps and everything, and at only 350 feet, likelihood is by then at an initial climb out of 2,500 to 3,000 feet per minute, maybe at acceleration altitude reducing to 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute, we're going to be way above this. So we've got to fix this sort of thing up. And what I'm going to do here in this case is say, right, I'll go a little bit higher than V2, 180 for a slow climb out, slow steady climb out. If you watch the planes taking off from this airport, you see they do that. There's noise reduction limits as well in the neighborhood here, so we don't want to go crazy there, and we want to be probably at 1000 and above by that point. And similarly, further 8 nautical miles down the line, we want to be maybe at slightly faster speed, and 4000 or above. And this is very much further on, getting towards 10,000. Okay, we can aim up for our 250 knot speed. So get that all sorted out, otherwise you hit VNAV and all sorts of surprising things can happen, including a sudden dive down to attain an altitude setting. These weren't hard altitude settings on the SID, that shouldn't be there, so that needs to be properly sorted out. If we look at our VNAV pages, you'll see, because I've used such a low such a high cost index, uneconomical, I'm going to be climbing at 315 knots, cruising at the same 0.801 Mach, and descending at 300 knots. So once we're at cruise level, we can adjust that, change our descent speed, cruise speed as we want, if you want to save some cash then. But the main thing now is to have a very high indicated airspeed, very high airspeed on climb, so that we keep that pitch down. Right, so let's have the thrust ref page, and I usually have this open for the climb out. Right, that's basically all programmed and set up to go, except for setting the 29059. Button problems there again. 29059 is my baro setting for today. Right, I'll rejoin you at the entry to runway 19 left, and we will see how that all pans out. Okay, we're on runway 19 left. We've got takeoff clearance, flaps are set, auto throttles armed, everything's set to go. Let's see how that VNAV works out. Right. Oops. 60 stabilized. let's just adjust that speed a bit. See, over our first waypoint we're already at 2,700. Waypoint, into arm, climb, select climb 2 and go VNAV. VNAV is set to 190. I just reset the bug by clicking on the speed intervention. Getting a climb out of 2,500, 2,600. It's not extreme at all. So, just slow climb out, still at flaps 1. So VNAV takeoff managed okay. 2,500 feet per minute climb. Climb 2 is enunciated, but this plus 30 should have been wiped out. That only applies to the takeoff thrust setting. An error should just enunciate climb 2. After the next fix point, we should be accelerating to 250. Just come over the coastline. So that's good. We can let go some noise, not disturbing anyone down below. Down to accelerate to 250. Get our flips up. Set our speed back to 250. Speed. Now she pitches up. Still at climb 2 thrust. And above 10,000 we're really going to let rip to get that very high 310 knot, was it? 315 knot speed. There we go, pitching down to speed up. 2,700 feet. 2,700 is not unusual for a 777. Above 12,000, it basically automatically engages climb, full climb thrust. Nothing we can do about that. Though it says climb 2 here, we can try and force it maybe to climb 1, but climb 1 should be restricted to 101.3. Okay, maybe it's doing something there. 4,200 feet per minute climb. 3. That's going to decay now as we climb. 3938. And none of the 6-700s that people are reporting. Pass on this route overhead, they're surely not at 20,000 feet and they're not doing 315 knots. So I suspect some of them are more heavily loaded or they're using another vertical navigation mode. Keep their speed down. redlining into. That's a bug, can't sort it out. Stick us on climb. I think it's on climb speed really. Climb setting. Okay, you see our arc where we're going to get our 32,000 feet cruise level. That is still way ahead of the calculated top of climb. Which is way out here somewhere. 140 nautical miles or so away. So there's still something wrong with top of climb calculation, and with the distance to top of climb it could work out a better vertical speed rate and vertical climb rate so that you don't have to do all this manipulation, but it works, and obviously the captains still have something to do with their VNAV programming, get it sorted out properly, and it remains to be seen when that will be done. But in the meantime, perfectly fine. Coming up on our climb, 2,000 feet per minute climb, it should have reduced by now, so we're going to overshoot. We're going to overshoot at about 80 feet or so. 80 feet over, switch to cruise. Cruise 299, so that's that. Giving the springs there. Right. So we can climb fairly reasonably the lightly loaded 777 if we do some homework first. At this stage, if we wanted to, we can go to a performance page, and if we wanted to be a bit more economical at cruise, we could change this, but it's a normal speed, it's quite fine. Using a 9.89. Just changing the cost index to a lower number will reset that down, and we can save some money. So that's it for the takeoff phase of the lightly loaded 777, and I'll do another one showing what happens if we're more heavily loaded for a long-range flight. Got other factors to consider. Thank you for watching.